What is up, Gang Green Nation, Gotham City, all my Jets fans? Of course, this is Tommy Jets, aka Thomas Christopher, and this is your weekly New York Jets Pulse. So, yesterday, the team finally cut down to their 53-man roster. They did it. The news was announced a little bit late than that 4 o'clock deadline, but we do have some interesting names being released. Zach Kuntz, he got waived, big time Jet fan, his family, but he just hasn't been able to put it together so far. He's probably going to end up on the practice squad. It'll be interesting to see what he does. Another interesting one, Tyler Harrell. I thought he was doing good in training camp. He also got the cut. Anthony Ferkser got cut after just being added. So that's a little surprising as well. I'm sure he'll be added to the team in some regards, depending on how injuries and everything like that goes. Brady Latham, another cut. I'm sure he'll find his way back to the practice squad as well, as long as Colavao, which I think Cole and Adrian Martinez will both also find their way back to the practice squad. In terms of other quarterbacks who people got cut, Andrew Peasley also did not make the roster. That's not really surprising, given his practice and in-game performances. Along the defensive line, Tanzel Smart also got cut. Brandon Smith, wide receiver, also got waived. Would be interesting to see if he makes it onto the practice squad as well. Xavier Valade got cut. He showed some pretty interesting stuff during camp too. It'll be interesting to see which one of these guys end up sticking on the practice squad. Who ends up going on the 53-man roster at some point during the season. Perhaps we see Jalen Key, who was waived, the Jets' 7th-round pick, aka Mr. Irrelevant. He was also waived. So it'll be interesting to see if he will also make the practice squad there. So the injured reserve / NFI list, these are for the injured guys. No surprises kind of here. Jordan Travis, he'll probably be on this list throughout the rest of the season. Leki Fotu, defensive lineman, he's probably going to be on there for a bit as well as Kenny Yeboah. So I'm expecting Fotu and Yeboah to find their way onto the 53-man roster eventually. Whether or not that leads to some certain people being cut, that's a little interesting to see. So there is some great news, though. The team actually added 3 undrafted free agents along the defensive line, making the team. This is Leonard Taylor III, Eric Watts, and Braiden McGregor. Jet fans have to love this one. I mean, let's be honest. Leonard Taylor, in 2022, Leonard Taylor was expected to be like a day 2 pick. He was great production. His film was amazing. He knows what to do with his hands in terms of rushing the passer. He just knows what he's doing, man. It's really great. The biggest question with Taylor has always been the effort. And so far with the Jets, that effort is shining through. Eric Watts was a great guy at the Senior Bowl. He looked tremendous at the Senior Bowl, and now he's starting to look great during team practice as well. He has been getting coached up by the Jets defensive lines coach throughout every portion of practice. He's just been getting better. It's really great to see him performing as well. And of course, Braiden McGregor had an awesome game in that preseason game against the Giants. He's another Senior Bowl standout, although he wasn't participating on day 3 due to an injury. But he's also looked great. Another pass rusher who ended up making the squad was Tack McKinley, former first-round pick with the Atlanta Falcons. He makes the team. So the Jets, I believe the Jets will have 10 defensive linemen, including edge rushers and defensive tackles, making the team, which is kind of interesting to look at and think about. Now, for wide receiver, this is another interesting one because we have a good amount of wide receivers on the team as well. Right now, it is 7 wide receivers. We got the auto locks with Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Alan Lazard, who some people actually might not have considered Lazard a lock, but he knew once Rodgers was here, he was a lock. Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson. And then, kind of the depth guys might be end up rotational guys who find their way from the 53-man team to the practice squad. That's Jason Brownlee and Irv Charles. Irv Charles is a player who I don't hate the player. I just think that, listen, if you can't perform at a higher level on anything other than special teams, I'm not necessarily for giving these people a roster spot. That sounds kind of harsh, But at the same time, if he's the primary gunner, I don't know why we couldn't use somebody like Stiggers and find somebody else who's able to participate on both sides of the ball. So I really hope Irv Charles really makes an impact on special teams, primarily in the punt game, to really prove that he's worth that roster spot. I think he might be one of the players that ends up finding themselves on on the odd side out. Uh, Running backs. So there was 4 running backs that the Jets decided to keep, which is pretty interesting when you think about it. We got Brees Hall. That's obvious, right? And then the Jets also drafted 2 running backs this offseason in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. So who was the third one? I mean, Izzy Abanikanda. And it's kind of interesting that he made the team. This is kind of hot takey, but I really believe that the Jets only added Abanikanda because of Tariq Cohen's retirement. And I don't mean that anything against Abanikanda. I think he's a good slashing runner. His vision lacks at times, but he's very athletic. He can go. The man can go. We saw that with that run against the Giants, and I really think that run actually helped solidify him in terms of him making the team. He kind of had to prove that a little bit there. So going forward with the offense, whether or not he stays on the team, that's remains to be seen. It's not like Abanikanda was really somebody that the Jets were using on kickoffs or anything. He was actually or kick returns. He was actually on the kickoff coverage team, which does not bode well for an offensive player, especially at running back. That you're one of the guys being asked to make some tackles. Doesn't bode well for him going forward, but maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe they're doing it in case of injury, or maybe they plan on trading him. Who knows? Dallas Cowboys? Who knows? So going forward, Tyler Conklin, tight ends, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert. Not really any surprises there. And of course, they have Yeboah on the NFI list. Offensive tackles, I thought this was interesting. Tyron Smith, obviously. Morgan Moses, obviously. Olufashinu, obviously. Carter Warren, not really too surprised he made the team. He was selected by the Jets. He hasn't really shown much, to be honest with you, but as long as he can continue to improve and potentially be a depth option, we're okay with that. Max Mitchell, I think, is another bubble roster guy who, if he doesn't, perform well to his expectations, he might be on the up and out. Offensive guards, we have John Simpson, no surprise. Joe Tippmann, no surprise. AVT, no surprise. Wes Schweitzer, who I'm not huge on. I don't think Schweitzer is that great of a center. He's, people were talking about Tippmann snapping issues. Schweitzer had some of his own, and Schweitzer's not nearly as good as a blocker as Joe Tippmann is. And I don't know if Schweitzer could actually move around that interior offensive line the same way Tippmann could if Tippmann doesn't work out at center. But I really like that they added Xavier Newman to the team. I thought Newman had a great practice and training camp this year. I'm really happy to see him make the team, and I'm happy the Jets rewarded somebody who was able to do that. So let's go to the defense side, guys who made the team. I've already alluded to Takk McKinley, Braiden McGregor, Eric Watts at the edge spots. Of course, we have Jermaine Johnson, no surprise. Will McDonald, no surprise. Michael Clemens. Clemens, might be slotted in as a starter. Who knows? I personally, I don't hate Clemens, but I just don't understand the hype that, the organization kind of has with him. Some fans kind of have with him either. Clemens hasn't really proven much of anything. He's a great run stopping edge, but the Jets don't necessarily need that. The run stopping isn't great as is, and having one player that's slightly above average in that regard, I don't think moves the needle, to be honest. Moving to defensive tackle, I already mentioned Leonard Taylor. There's also Solomon Thomas, Javon Kinlaw, and Quentin Williams. The hope here is that Leonard Taylor finds a way to surpass Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw, and can play alongside Quentin Williams on rundowns for first down, second down. Hey, I'm even happy with third down. Leonard Taylor is a guy who can just pin his ears. If he can just pin his ears back and attack out of that position, we'd love to see that. Moving down to the linebackers, CJ Mosley, no surprise. Quincy Williams, no surprise. Jamie Sherwood, no surprise. And I want to give a shout out to Sherwood. I know I've been really critical of him this offseason. he's really put together a great offseason. He looks like he's consistently improving. Chaz Surratt and Zaire Barnes, those guys, I mean, they're just depth. Maybe they might be bubble roster guys. Like who really knows there? Cornerback, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. No really surprises there. Brandon Eccles, who supposedly is going to play slot cornerback behind Michael Carter. Not sure why or how that's working. I don't think Eccles is really a great slot cornerback, but it is what it is at this time. Quantez Stiggers, who I thought was actually going to be the slot corner replacement, is not. He's actually listed behind the outside cornerbacks. He makes the team, obviously. And JBC, no surprise with that either. The cornerbacks kind of cut and dry. One interesting tidbit, though, is that the Jets actually traded Brandon Codrington to the Buffalo Bills for 2026 pick swap. Listen, I'd like the deal for the Jets. My only issue with this is I am not a fan of trading players to in-division rivals. Come on, like this just doesn't make sense. If nobody else wanted Codrington, I would have been fine keeping him or trying to see if he could go to the practice squad, because as a cornerback, Codrington still had a lot of work to do. He wasn't necessarily there. He's not smooth. It's not natural for him. He has stuff he has to work on. But as a returner, Codrington, I think, was more aggressive than Gibson was. I think he was seeing the field better than Gibson. It wouldn't have hurt to try to give him an opportunity there. But that said, what if Codrington blows? Like, the Bills need safety depth. Okay, so that makes sense why they added Codrington, corner depth. That's why they added him. Maybe they try to move him throughout that secondary. So they needed help in their secondary, depth wise. Maybe that's why they also don't have a guaranteed returner. So I understand the move, why the Bills did it. I will never understand why the Jets will ever trade with interdivision rivals, especially for picks like that. It could seem like nothing right now, but hey, man, I just don't like the fact that we gave somebody from our team to a division rival who in turn could eventually hurt us if possible. How many times have we seen people do that out of spite? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Not great. We've seen that before in the past with kick returners. That's the only reason why I'm a little bit nervous on that. All right. So moving to safety, we have Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, Ashton Davis. No surprises there. Isaiah Oliver, who moved from cornerback to safety, something I think Codrington might end up doing in Buffalo. That's not really a surprise at all either. Special teams, despite missing all those field goals against the Giants, Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg makes the team. Thomas Morstead, that's obvious. And Thomas Hennessy, the long snapper, also made the team. Now, I was talking about this on the Jets Uncovered podcast, but, it's interesting to see how specialized long snappers are in terms of how different they are compared to just your regular centers. I'm not sure. I've never been a long snapper. I've always played defenses out of the ball. When I did play football, I'm not sure of the ins and outs, but the Pro Bowl has shown that it's, kind of difficult to do some of that stuff. So I really am fascinated that Hennessy continues to make the team, and some of these other centers just either can't adapt or it's too much of a burden on them. Probably with the differences in snapping, they don't like to get guys out of rhythm, confuse guys, just kind of make the job more difficult, which makes sense. At the same time, it's just very interesting to see. And of course, as everybody knows, there's yet to be Haason Reddick on the Jets. He has not reported yet. I'm assuming that one of these 53-man guys, either on the Max Mitchell, one of the wide receivers, perhaps one of the linebackers, who knows? One of them might be on the chopping block once he does return. We're starting to see his his isolation videos, his individual practice videos starting to surface. I mean, he's just at this point, he's just trying to say what he's ready. But at the same time, the Jets don't have to listen. After that performance against the Giants, and yes, I know it's a preseason, but it's not just this performance against the Giants. It's the performance that the team has had throughout this whole entire summer with their defensive line. I'm upset that they let Bryce Huff walk. I'll continue to be upset about that. I'm upset that they let JFM walk, but they do have great talent on that line. And one thing that I don't think they need is somebody like Reddick. He's a great. He can transform that defense into like beyond elite. But at the same time, it's not somebody that if he's not there, the Jets are going to necessarily be hurting. In that same breath, I'm not nearly as big of a fan of Will McDonald as some other fans are. Great spin move, but he has not shown anything to me against the run, which that doesn't matter because Haason Reddick's not great against the run either. You know what I mean? He's shown that spin move, no great pass rush moves other than that spin move. Which, hey, if he can pull out a career with it the same way Dwight Freeney did, that's excellent. But I don't think that's him. He was already an older prospect coming into the league. It was just all about his athleticism, which is why he's probably dominant with that with that spin move. But at the same time, we're not seeing a good swim move out of him. We're not seeing a great bull rush out of him. He kind of gets bullied against against offensive linemen in the running attack. It doesn't set the edge well in that regard at all. So that's not really something that Haason Reddick's great at either. So I'm not necessarily worried if Reddick doesn't show up to the team, but at the same time, the Jets need to figure out what they're going to do with McDonald, whether he's going to be put into a Bryce Huff kind of role and only, rush on passing downs, or if they're going to fill out one of the other edge, because they have all these other edge rushers now, right? So you got to assume perhaps Tack McKinley is going to be there on some rushing downs, maybe even one of the UDFAs as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see the deployment. We already know that Robert Saleh liked to deploy his defensive linemen kind of in waves. So I'm really interested to see how that. I'm interested to see who's on that first team. If it is Will McDonald or if they end up going like the Tack McKinley route, who knows? And then I want to see who comes in on that second wave. If it's going to be McGregor or if it's going to be Watts. And then I'm really interested on the defensive line too, where Taylor stands, and if it ends up being Quinnen Williams and Kinlaw, and then Thomas and Taylor, or if it ends up being something a little bit different. Regardless, though, this might be one of the better Jets teams that we've seen in the past decade. Well, it's definitely one of the better teams that we've seen in the past decade. Maybe the only one kind of giving it a rival would be that 2015 team with Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I mean, hey, I didn't even go over quarterbacks, but Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor, they only kept two. But Aaron Rodgers, leaps and bounds above Ryan Fitzpatrick in terms of talent. And the Jets defense is better than the Bulls led defense, despite that team having some really good players on it as well. But this definitely probably one of the deepest teams the Jets have had. The one position I really think they need to focus on or hopefully add going forward is at that wide receiver position. There's been a lot of interesting cuts. Donovan Peoples-Jones could be interesting. Noah Brown could be interesting from the Texans. Terrace Marshall from the Carolina Panthers. Those could be interesting options at wide receiver. Maybe John Mechie. And then interior offensive line. Look, I'm glad that they brought in Newman, but at the same time, that depth there is incredibly weak. Schweitzer, I don't think, is a great backup piece in case Tippmann gets hurt. I really think they should go after a center if possible. If not, they really need to they're putting all their eggs in the Tippmann basket. And as much as I love Tippmann, I still truly believe that he's better off at guard than at center. He's already he's already one of the tallest centers you could possibly have. And that might be an issue in and of itself. But at the same time, and we need some backup pieces there that's like true depth. And I think Newman can play some of the interior positions, but I don't think either of them can move around if necessary. And I really want to see a solid centerpiece option in there. Maybe it's McGovern. If he's completely healthy, I'd love to bring him in. Or at least bring in some type of competition where it's not just Schweitzer. Because Schweitzer, listen, let's take nothing away. It's already hard enough making an NFL team. So I don't want to make it out like these guys are bums if I don't like them. But Schweitzer is not at a level where you can rely upon him. If Schweitzer is your center, you're having some serious problems. And if anybody thinks that the Tippmann snapping issues were bad, just wait till you see Schweitzer's blocking issues. And that'll be even worse. Like Tippmann's had his struggles, but if Schweitzer's in, like, I don't even know what the season's going to look like, because that's like the centerfold piece on the offensive line is the center always. The blind side, left tackle blind side, that's always important too. But center is probably the most important position on the offensive line. You got to help with coverage. You got to help with coverages, recognizing who the mic is. Understanding defensive assignments, communicating throughout the offensive line. It's a lot of work. It truly is a lot of work. And maybe Schweitzer can do that communication wise, but I don't think he has the talent level to do it blocking wise. So that'll be very interesting to see how this continues to develop, because although the 53-man roster is set, it's going to be a fluid development as time goes on. Like, obviously we have the locks, the Aaron Rodgers, the CJ Mosleys, the Sauce Gardners. Those guys will never go anywhere unless they get hurt. But then you have the back end roster guys where we'll see a lot of maneuvering depending on the matchups that the Jets have, as well as in other injuries. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm very intrigued to see how this ends up developing going forward, how Haason Reddick will play in that development going forward if he ends up being part of the team. Rich Cimini said that he'll be here probably September 2nd or 3rd, potentially. A lot of other people disagree. So it's something to really keep an eye on as we're inching closer to this regular season. So I just want people to be aware of that. Just because your favorite player got waived, if he makes it to the practice squad, there's still a chance he can find himself on the 53 at some point, or potentially get claimed by another team. So we'll see how that goes. But hey, this has been an exciting time. Everybody loves it. We're getting closer to football, college football starting week 1. Yeah, so the season's coming fast, so it's best to be prepared. So with that, hey man, this is the Jets Pulse for your Inner City Jets, and this is Tommy Jets. Until next time, guys.